Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project. I'm Rob Kalvarowski, and as always, the yang to my yin is here, Susan Hobson. Susan, how are you?
I am excellent and so excited for our guest today. So let's go. Let's get this party started, shall we?
Absolutely. And so we have to start off, as always, with a quote. And I have one here from Robin Sharma.
Ooh.
And he says, "What tests your patience can grow your patience."
Amen. Tell us why you picked that
Abs-
one today, sir.
Yeah, I mean, of course, actually, it was funny. Yesterday on LinkedIn, I posted the story about Winston and trying to take down a tree and
Yeah.
how that was a moment where I learned emotional intelligence. And also, it's something that popped up with a few of my clients this week was this element of frustration, either with folks that they're working with or with their themselves. And I think that these are moments, of course, as we talk about in IFS terms, right, is these are the trailheads that need to be explored. And so I
Mhm.
just wanted to start us off there today. Now we have a special guest, the CEO of Spring2 Innovation, the author of Future Proofing by Design, and TEDx speaker, Nilufer Erdebil is with us. Nilufer, how are you?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
We're so excited to have you here. Before we dig in, because there's so much to dig into here in this interview, why don't we rewind the game tape and just tell our folks a little bit about who you are, the mission you're on in this world, and what
Sure.
inspired you to go on that mission?
Yeah. And before you go on, as well too is Rob, you just called me Nilufer, but feel free to call me Nil. I've already mentioned to Susan she can call me Nil too, so that's completely good with me. I started my company Spring2 Innovation about 13 years ago. Um, I was on a mission to help other organizations be more innovative. And as I spoke to organizations about innovation consulting, at the time they were asking me, well, what does innovation mean? And so I slowly started teaching on what innovation meant and started planting some seeds on how organizations could be more innovative. And then people wanted more of, okay, how can I bring this in and apply it in my workplace? And that's when I started getting more into what we do right now. And that is around design thinking, training, consulting, facilitation, coaching, all things that encompass design thinking. And it's really funny. As my background, I actually have an undergrad degree in engineering and a business degree. And I was always on leading edge projects. And they would get canceled inevitably in one way, shape, or form, or they wouldn't do as well in market. And I always wanted to know what is going on. Like, we're building and creating all these great products. Why aren't people buying them, or why are they ending these projects? And so that's when I started to think and understand a little bit more about customers and end users. And I ended up where I am right now. On a personal note, I have two teenage boys, and so they're always teaching me about people. And in my yeah, yeah, it's I feel like I have my own social experiment here, which is phenomenal. And in my spare time, I actually 2 years ago got back into figure skating. So as an adult now,
Amazing.
I compete in figure skating. Yeah, it's lots of fun, tons of fun, such a great community, and it allows me to focus on something other than work and kids. So I love that aspect.
I feel like we got to dig there. But the first place I want to dig is just
Yeah.
backing up to what you said in terms of when you were in the trenches trying to drive innovation in-house, right? You would notice that most oftentimes that these products wouldn't land. So what in all of that excavation and discovery did you discover about why that is?
Yeah. I was working in an innovation lab, and we had people from partner companies in there. And one of the senior folks in there, in one of our partner companies, suggested that we invite some potential clients to look at the solutions that we were working on. And in my engineering head, I was like, well, why would we do that? And after a couple conversations, he convinced us to bring in our clients, and they actually told us exactly what they would buy, what features they needed, how much they would pay for stuff. And we also got a chance to talk about some of the bigger problems that they had that we could actually solve really easily, so that as we were developing the products, they were geared towards the customers. And then when the products came to market, there was already an audience for it, and we knew their audience really well. That made the market, the product, much more successful in market.
Sounds like a human-centric approach. What's up with the blind spot, though? I feel like we've known about focus groups since like the 70s. So
Yeah. So very good insights there. So there's a difference between focus groups and actually bringing your customers in as you're developing products and services. And so usually focus groups are closer to the end. Sometimes they'll do it earlier on as well too, but design thinking is more about understanding your users before you even start product development and design, before you start service design, and then bringing them along if you can. And so as you're coming up with ideas, as you're prototyping and testing, and as you're iterating and then implementing it too, because sometimes what you think they have said, how you've interpreted it, is different than what they actually want as well too. And so having the end user along for the whole developmental and launch cycle component of it, and it makes a huge difference.
how so?
Well, at the end, you have things that your end customers actually will be using, and as they've been part, yeah, I know that
That's a
sounds
good start.
and as you hit the market, you already have a core audience of people that want to buy your products, and they'll tell other people about your products and services. And it's very fascinating. The people that are going to buy your products and services aren't necessarily like you, and so we have a lot of thoughts about how we would behave, but the people that we might be selling our products and services to might behave quite differently than how we behave. And so we make all of these assumptions along the way. And so if you're able to actually bring in those customers and ask them those questions as you're designing and developing, then you're more likely to get solutions that they will actually want, need, and use.
Woo, getting into
So no,
mindset.
yeah, I mean, I would love to just take a step back. I mean, of course, I have an engineering background as well. And but I would love to take a step back for folks and just start off with, what is design thinking? Like, is this only, bringing the customer along? And I know like a big portion of it is designing for the customer in mind, but let's walk folks through, like, what is design thinking?
Yeah, so design thinking, and sometimes it's called human-centered design as well too, is looking at the world through an end client perspective. And so it's almost like you're viewing the world through your client's eyes. And so there's a methodology around it, and it usually has 5 phases. First, you're understanding your customers better through the empathize phase. So understanding their needs, their expectations, their challenges, before you actually define what the problem is that you need to solve. And it's really fascinating because we have different types of end customers and end users. And so understanding all of them before we articulate what the problem is that we want to solve, or reframe what the problem is that we want to solve. And then we get into the fun part of coming up with solutions, prototyping, and testing. And in organizations in the business world, we're actually really great at jumping into solution mode, but it takes a lot to pull back and be like, well, who is it that we're actually developing and designing these solutions for? And then, hey, why don't we actually talk to them and get their perspective before we actually start spending too much time and effort into developing something that they may or may not buy for the amount of money that we need to sell it at. And so I would say at the end of the day, design thinking is looking at things from a human-centered perspective, from a people perspective. And it's an opportunity to look from the outside in rather than just from the inside out.
Ooh, that's so good. That's what we talk about in the mindset arena as well, in terms of the optimal strategies being inside out, not outside in. And so I have to back up this truck a little bit. It sounds like a lot of mindset strategy that's going into this human-centric design, which does not surprise us as human-centric leadership coaches who
Yeah.
specialize in mindset. You really are getting that buy-in, right? Which motivates that client to want to actually work with your products. But I'm curious, do you work on the mindsets of the leaders before you even bring this in to work with their teams?
Ideally, that is the path, and we sometimes do. That's not usually the path that's taken. So we've developed different types of training for our clients, and usually we do a 1 day on design thinking or a 5 day certification program. And over time, we've developed a design thinking for leaders training program as well, because when the leaders understand how this methodology and mindset works,
Mhm.
they're able to apply it themselves um, to their teams. And there's a lot of really valuable tools that they can use as a leader, and also to be able to support their team in the way it needs to be supported, because it's a different way of working as well. And so ideally, we get a chance to talk to the leaders within an organization and then work with them to educate the rest of the organization or teams so that they can be a lot more creative and look for things that they might not have seen in the past through bringing in that human-centered perspective through design thinking.
So I'd love to touch on a little bit like how does human design thinking increase our innovation or the potential that we can innovate?
Yeah, sometimes when people ask me, how would you describe design thinking? And I think of it as a combination of creative problem solving and critical thinking. And so the way that it adds to innovation is it allows you to see opportunities that you might not have seen before. Actually, it allows you to see challenges you might not have seen before, as well as opportunities you haven't seen before, because you're understanding your end users' challenges better. And at the end of the day, the reason that organizations exist is to help other people to solve human problems. And so if you're able to understand all of the different problems that they have, then it's a lot easier to come up with solutions to new problems, or to come up with more creative solutions to problems, because you are working together with end users to come up with those solutions.
I want to switch gears and I want to ask you about this whole deeper clarity method and where does that exactly fit into this methodology that you just unpacked for us
Yeah,
around human-centric design thinking?
thank you. Yeah, in the last 8 months, we've been talking about deeper clarity. And as we've worked with our clients in the past around design thinking, we've noticed there's a few things that really add value when used with design thinking. And so we've come up with our own methodology that is based on design thinking that also incorporates alignment, strategic thinking, strategic foresight, and mindset. And so um, the reason we've combined these is we found that as we went into organizations, there was a lot of strategy that is coming down from senior leadership, and we're working with project teams. And so part of what they needed to do and had a hard time doing sometimes was knowing that there's a strategy, knowing that their team is funded, what do they actually need to do? And so we help them better articulate what their leadership feels the challenge is and what they feel they need to do, and bring the team together so that they can articulate it really clearly and identify measures of success before actually even getting into the design thinking component of understanding their end users better. And so the project team itself, bringing them together, and then as they're doing the project and as they're finding out about their end users, thinking about what the future might hold through strategic foresight, because a lot of the time, especially large organizations, are solving yesterday's problem.
Mm,
Yeah.
mhm,
So people change a lot. And so
mhm.
by the time you've gotten all of this funding, It might not be as big a problem, or it might be a bigger problem.
Right.
And by the time you implement it, sometimes a year, 2, 3 years out, things could have changed quite a bit. And so, what are some indicators of what the future might hold for the organization, for the team, for their customers, and bringing those insights in and being able to ask some of those insights of your end users as you're talking with them. And there's usually signals that indicate what might be happening. And so considering those future possibilities as you're creating solutions for today. And then the last element, and you guys love and breathe this every day, is the mindset component. And I found that as we worked using design thinking, there's a really big shift that happens when people start to think from an end user perspective. But there's a lot of other different types of mindset that have to be incorporated that help when they're incorporated into thinking about a project. And so we hear a lot about growth mindset, and that's certainly a part of it, an aspirational mindset. Um, there's also systems mindset too, thinking about how this belongs into a larger whole, and so many more, because at the end of the day, we're people creating solutions for people, and mindset is a huge factor in whether or not anything in work is going to be successful. And so, how can we make sure that we're nurturing different types of mindsets as the project team is working together to come up with solutions from a human centered perspective?
Is that function, like thinking in these different ways, are those at different stages of the project, or do you want different folks on the team to be thinking in these specific ways, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's different mindsets that we highlight at different phases of the deeper clarity method. And as the project progresses, deeper clarity is actually really great to help teams with at the start of projects and with strategic thinking and being able to take the strategy and be able to execute on it. And so when we're talking about alignment, there's different mindsets that you need for alignment. When we're talking about the empathy phase, then there's different types of mindsets that you need. And as you're prototyping, testing, and then continuously iterating as well too. And so we help highlight what some of those different mindsets that you want to have as a team are. All of those mindsets are great to have throughout, but there's specific ones that you need to focus in on as you go through the project. Great question.
I have a question for you. As an expert in innovation and someone on a mission to optimize how we innovate, what are your thoughts in terms of how AI is going to disrupt this space of innovation? Like, where does that fit into design thinking? I'm curious.
Yeah, great question. And I think about this a lot. Having a technology background, I used to do software development and design for quite a while when earlier on in my career, and I love seeing what's being developed. And I'm definitely on a lot of sites checking out AI tools. At the end of the day, it's about making humans' lives better. And so it's a two-pronged: is how do we use AI in organizations? How do we develop AI? And how do we shift how we live because of AI being introduced? And AI means so many different things, but at the end of the day, it's about having technology be able to help make our lives easier. And so design thinking is really important because you need to figure out what those problems really truly are by talking to actual human beings. I think AI can help out a little bit, and it could provide some a starting point for the types of questions that you might want to be asking. But at the end of the day, you still want to try to create better life for human beings. And it's the same in business, is you want to make sure that you actually have a problem that you want AI to solve. And I know a lot of people are experimenting with AI, and there's a lot of cool stuff in there. For me and for other colleagues that own businesses, when there's a specific challenge that the AI is solving, it's awesome, it sticks, and we continue to use it. But if we're just playing around for the fun of it, it doesn't stick as much. And so trying to find out where are the challenges in the business and how can you bring in different types of AI to solve those challenges, because sometimes AI creates new problems as well too. I think we've seen a lot of that, and
Mhm.
yeah, and so keeping that in mind as businesses are bringing in AI, but there does need to be a strong understanding of what's behind that AI, what kind of data sets are being used for that AI as well too, because it does introduce a lot of biases. And human-centered design is about uncovering biases as well, and being able to see where we might have some gaps and biases and be able to overcome them. And if we're introducing more biases, then it makes it difficult to create solutions and offerings that fit everybody in the world. So lots of thoughts on AI. And if I had to say one thing about it as people are using it, remember that it's just an enabler. It's helping you do something as a human being. And I am all over putting in as much AI as you need into your business to solve specific problems, keeping that end user in mind. And so if your users or if your clients really appreciate that human touch, then if you're thinking about an end-to-end customer experience, then you want to make sure that you have as much human to human connection as you're delivering your services or as you're delivering your products. If your customers don't care as much about it, maybe you put in a lot more technology in. And it doesn't have to be just AI. There's a whole bunch of different types of technology that are really valuable. I talk a lot about IoT, Internet of Things, and that's the sensors themselves that are out there that are creating so much data that we're not even aware of how much data is out there from these sensors. It's just going on in the background. And so when you combine tools like Internet of Things, IoT, and you bring in AI to be able to process all of this data, so much information gets pulled together. But as humans, we need to figure out, well, what are we going to be doing with that information? And what are the challenges that we're going to use that data to solve, that AI to solve? So I think at the end of the day, everything comes back to that human perspective. And even for designing AI too, is if you're creating AI solutions, who are you creating that for? Are you creating that for super tech savvy people? Are you creating that for a certain type of an audience? What are their needs? What are their challenges? How easily will they adapt AI? What does that interface need to look like to make it as easy as possible for them to use? And so many things go into even creating an AI product from a human-centered perspective. I'm
Well,
super
the AI
passionate
is going
about
to
it.
have its own computer centric perspective and kill us all, but that's another story for another day.
Robert.
We
I
need
think there's a
Arnie. We need Arnie.
yeah, exactly. I think there's
Oh,
a movie
God.
about that. Yeah, there's a lot of things to be cautious about with AI too, definitely. Um, yeah, there's a lot of people that do think that it might be the end of us.
Trouble.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
but that's
trouble.
why you need people in there that are setting in some rules in terms of what AI, how it's trained, what it can do, and an understanding, a deeper understanding of the AI itself. And at the end of the day, um, it's been around for quite a while, software development and design and iterative software development, and so it's it's been creeping up, and then all of a sudden the last 2 years it's a huge progression and it's only gonna get faster. And so as a society and as business leaders try and figure out how can you leverage AI, and what are some of the policies that you want to have as an organization around AI. I mean, for us, as we hire some folks to help us in different parts of the business, we want to make sure that they're actually doing the work and not the AI. Because if we wanted AI to do it, we would just use AI to do it. And so we want to make sure that, and I think that's something that schools have been grappling with for the last 2 years. And
Mhm.
I think more businesses are going to notice that they need to pay attention to who's actually doing the work in order to be able to make sure that it's more human, and also that we're actually making the best use of the people in our organizations.
Speaking of flashing to the future and innovation, what do our leaders listening right now need to double down on when it comes to this whole design thinking methodology to prepare for how much this is going to start to really escalate and accelerate all this innovation, I think, also due to AI, right?
Yeah. I think of design thinking as a way to help solve complex problems because it's not a one-to-one relationship. There's a whole bunch of things going on at the same time, and especially with deeper clarity and the alignment component of it, alignment and design thinking in deeper clarity really help break large problems down into smaller sizes that can actually be executed. And so it's really great for planning and prioritization where you have this huge complex problem and then figuring out, well, who are the people involved and what are the smaller pieces of problems that we need to solve initially? What does success look like? Getting the whole team to agree on that together. And so for leaders, in terms of what they should be thinking about right now, is how can they bring in more of the skills into their organizations for looking at things from a human-centered perspective. At the end of the day, yeah, we want more. Yeah, exactly.
We happen to agree over here at the Leadership
Yeah.
Launchpad.
Yeah, we want more of a people perspective. I think people are also how we work has shifted a lot over the last 5 years, and I think people crave more connection to organizations and to their clients that they're serving. And so I think for me, as I've worked with teams, leaders, organizations, the best ways to do that is through better understanding customers. And sometimes it could be internal customers in an organization. And a lot of the time it's external. And when you understand them and can connect to them, and you're trying to solve their problems for them, there's a lot more engagement that I see teams having because they're trying to create value for people and they understand the value that they're bringing forward. And it's even better if you can actually talk to some of those end users as well along the way to see the impact that you're having. And so that human perspective, especially empathy over the last 4 or 5 years, has become such a big factor, and I'm super happy about that in business, whether it's in dealing with teams and with employee experience, but also with customers as well. Certain things we want more people engagement with, and we're willing to pay more for it too. And so I think that's going to be a huge differentiator for organizations that they can get that customer experience really well from a human perspective and the employee experience within an organization. And at the end of the day, regardless of what technology we're bringing in, it's to solve problems for people. So when we have businesses that we're helping out with for digital transformation, as they're bringing new technologies, whether it's AI, ERP, CRMs, it's always looking at things from that human perspective. What is that human problem we're trying to solve?
Amazing.
I
Now, Nilufer, we have to ask this question to all our guests.
Yeah.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I think about what I want my legacy to be is to help as many people as we can understand things from a people perspective, to be able to connect with one another and with their customers and with their employees so that people feel part of communities and to have an ability to see things from that end user perspective. Because when we do our training, the most satisfying part of it is seeing people shift their mindsets right in front of us as we showcase the methodology and they start to think from that client, that end user perspective. And they're like, oh, so I need to change it up to include these things as well. That's the most gratifying aspect of it. And so, in terms of the legacy, I'd love to be able to help many more people shift their mindsets from an end user perspective and also the other types of mindsets that we talk about in the dynamic mindsets, aspirational mindset, authentic mindset, growth mindset. Because at the end of the day, I think we all want to do a great job in our work environments. And it's been too long that we haven't looked at things from a human perspective. And so bringing that humanity back into work so that we're actually able to connect as people to have a better time at work, and also to create better experiences for our customers. Because I think at the end of the day, people want to do a great job. It's how do you create environments where you can pull the best out of them and have people actually enjoying the experience of going to work.
Whew, amen, sister, preach.
Yeah.
Right, Robert?
What's that? Yeah.
Mic drop.
Absolutely. And for folks out there, if you want to connect with Nilufer, you can, I've dropped her LinkedIn in the podcast notes, as well as you can head on over to spring2innovation.com. And when I say two, it's the number two, but that's also in the podcast notes as well. Now, is there anywhere else you want folks to find you, or anything that you're working on that you want to tell us about?
So we published a book last year, Future Proofing by Design, that you'd mentioned earlier. We're working on another one right now for the private sector to make sure that we're able to highlight the 10 things that organizations need to do in order to be able to do that, taking that strategy and being able to execute on it, and to increase strategic thinking in their organization. And that's through deeper clarity with the alignment, the design thinking, strategic foresight, and mindset all together, so that teams are actually more successful, projects are delivered on time and on budget, and people feel like they're part of a community as they're delivering those projects. So watch out for that book. I think either end of this year or early next year. And we have monthly webinars people can sign up for that they can find out through our social. And we also have a YouTube channel if people want to catch up on past stuff that we've done in it.
Awesome. We'll drop those links in the podcast notes as well. Obviously, for folks listening, please hit subscribe to Leadership Launchpad Project and share it with any leaders in your life. And for one-on-one executive coaching, corporate leadership development, and more, head on over to elitehighperformance.com for all of that. Susan, where do you want to land the plane this week?
I feel like it's just a beautiful confluence of our worlds coming together right now. As it turns out, human-centric thinking is what drives innovation, growth, impact on both sides of the equation here at the Leadership Launchpad Project. We're trying to make this case every week about how it helps to drive the human potential of our people, right? But ultimately, why would that be any different when it comes to servicing our clients?
Yeah.
This totally makes so much sense. And it also backs up why Leadership 2.0 is such a massively important thing to be doubling down on right now. That you heard it from the expert herself. It's going to be a race to get these skills, right, developed in our people, because these are the ones that are going to be able to survive when that innovation starts to accelerate. I just love this so much. It totally makes all those cases in one. So good. How about you, sir?
For me, it comes back to listening. And it's something, obviously, we talk about a lot and we coach folks on very often. But one of Brene Brown's empathy misses is skipping right to the answer and solving. And so, as the expression goes, we only have one mouth and we have two ears. We need to turn on those ears and listen and ask great questions and be curious. And that's what get us the next level of learning for everyone. Nilufer, incredible to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me. That was fantastic.
Everyone out there, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.